My name is Emily Hayes. I am 34 years old. I teach fourth grade, and for 7 years I could tell you what kind of night it would be by the way my husband set his keys on the counter. That night, he didn't set them down. He threw them. I remember small things with a terrible clarity. The keys skidding across the tile. The particular silence that comes right before the kind that makes the air feel too thin to pull into your lungs. My own heartbeat, so loud I was sure he could hear it across the room. There was glass on the floor by then, and I never heard it break. I remember pressing my spine into the edge of the counter until it hurt, because the hurt was the only thing holding me up. I had my phone flat against my thigh. I did not call the police. Some animal part of me knew there was no time to explain, to spell out my address, to wait. I dialed a number I'd known since I was 16, not 911, a private line, my father's, and under my breath, I gave the code. He answered before the first ring finished. I couldn't manage a sentence. I got out 3 words, barely a breath. The tide's in. 3 words my father had drilled into me at a kitchen table just like this one when I was a girl who thought he was ridiculous. 3 words that meant nothing to anyone in the world but the 2 of us. They meant, I'm in danger. Come. Don't wait. He didn't ask what was wrong. He didn't tell me to calm down. There was no fear in his voice at all, and that emptiness was the most terrifying and the most steadying thing I have ever heard. Flat. Certain. Already moving. Emily. Keep him in that room. Don't let him get near the door. I'm 90 seconds out. For 18 years, I carried those 3 words and never once said them aloud. For 18 years, my husband looked at my quiet, gray-haired father and saw a man who used to file paperwork somewhere and now fixed the neighbors' lawnmowers. He never asked why a nobody teaches his daughter a code to stay alive. He was about to find out. And so was I. To understand that night, you have to go back 3 months, and then back further than that to the version of me that let it all happen quietly. I grew up in a small town on the North Carolina coast, the kind of place where everyone fishes, everyone shows up to church, and everyone agrees, without ever saying it out loud, that family trouble stops at the front porch. My father, Walter, was the quiet man with the pickup truck and the old Labrador named Duke. People saw him buy tomatoes at the Saturday market. They saw him fix a neighbor's mower for free. They saw him drink his coffee black at the diner on Thursday mornings, alone, and they thought that was the whole of him. My mother, Carol, was the warm one. She was the one who taught me to bake, who cried at long-distance commercials, who filled the silences my father left. She died of breast cancer when I was 22, and after that my father got quieter still. And I learned that grief in a certain kind of man doesn't look like weeping. It looks like a garage light on at 2 a.m. It looks like a man who mows the same lawn twice because sitting still is unbearable. I met Derek Coleman when I was 26. He sold luxury trucks out on the highway, and he walked into every room like it owed him applause for showing up. He was tall, he was loud, he had very white teeth and an opinion about everything, and for a while I mistook all of that for confidence. He was charming the way a salesman is. Charming he found the thing you were unsure about and told you it was beautiful. After my mother, after the quiet, I wanted so badly to be told I was beautiful. We married the summer I turned 27. My father shook Derek's hand at the wedding and said almost nothing, and I was angry at him for it. I thought he was being cold. I know now he was doing the one thing a certain kind of man knows how to do, which is watch. Here's the thing about how it starts. It does not start with a raised hand. If it started with a raised hand, none of us would stay. It starts with a joke. The first one I remember clearly was Thanksgiving, 2 years into the marriage. I had overcooked the turkey, a little dry, nothing worth mentioning. Derek carved one slice, held it up to the table like evidence, and grinned. "Well," he said, "good thing you're pretty, Em. You sure aren't winning top chef." Everyone laughed. My aunt laughed. My cousin laughed. I laughed too, because that is what you do, and because the alternative was to admit that something in my chest had gone cold and small. But I watched my hands set down the serving fork, and I watched my shoulders climb toward my ears before the joke had even finished landing, and some quiet animal in me understood a thing my mouth was not ready to say. My body flinched before the words did. That is the first sign, if you ever want to know it. The body keeps the score, the mouth is too polite to read. After that, I started paying attention, the way you can't unnotice a sound once you've heard it. At Christmas, he made a joke about the sweater I was wearing until I went upstairs and changed it. At Easter, he snapped at me in front of his mother because I'd forgotten to bring ice, and then spent the drive home explaining, patiently, kindly, all the ways I made things harder than they needed to be. In front of people, he corrected my stories. That's not how it happened. She always exaggerates. Emily's terrible with details, and every single time, I smiled through it. That is what frightened my father, though I didn't know it yet. Not the shouting, the smiling, because there were witnesses, always. That is the part nobody tells you. A whole table of people who heard it, who felt the temperature drop, who looked down at their plates in a small synchronized motion like a flock of birds turning at once, and who said nothing. Who decided, each of them, that it was a joke, that it wasn't their business, that the porch was the porch and the house was the house. Their silence taught me faster than his voice did. It taught me that if I ever said it out loud, I would be the one who ruined the dinner. So I got quiet. I, who had once been a girl who cried over a poem. I, who had stood in front of a fourth grade classroom every single day and been, in that one room, completely myself. At home, I learned to make myself smaller, and I got so good at it that I stopped noticing I was doing it, the way you stop hearing a refrigerator hum. That July, my father invited us over for a barbecue. Nothing fancy, burgers, corn, store-brand potato salad, couple of neighbors. Derek had been drinking before we even arrived. I could smell the whiskey under his cologne when he leaned in to open my door for me, because he always opened my door in front of people. My father stood at the grill in an apron that said, "Kiss the cook, a gift from my mother, a decade dead," and Duke lay under the table with his chin on his paws. Derek watched him flip the burgers and said, loud enough for the neighbors, "You know, Walt, you're the calmest old man I've ever met." "That's supposed to be an insult?" my father said, mild as milk. "Nah, just saying. Most military guys never shut up about it. You barely mention it." Derek took a pull of his beer. "What'd you even do in the Navy anyway?" "File paperwork?" The neighbors chuckled. My father turned a burger, checked the underside, set it back down. "Something like that," he said. Derek pointed the bottle at him, warming to his audience. "See, that's what I mean. Emily acts like you're some kind of secret badass." He laughed. "I think most of those old military stories are exaggerated anyway." The yard went quiet. My father flipped another burger. He did not look up. And I saw the thing I would only understand months later. I saw my father's hand, the one holding the spatula, go completely still. Not clenched. Still. The stillness of a man who has decided very deliberately not to do something he is entirely capable of doing. Nobody else saw it. They saw a quiet old man let a young one talk. What Derek saw, I think, was permission. Later that night, while the men talked and the neighbors drifted home, I went inside to help my father carry plates. It was the first moment we'd been alone, and the moment the kitchen door swung shut behind us, he set down the stack he was holding and looked at my wrist. I hadn't even realized my sleeve had ridden up. There was a bruise there, yellow-green at the edges, half covered by the makeup I'd learned to keep in my purse. I pulled the sleeve down so fast it was its own confession. "What happened there?" my father said. It wasn't a question. "Nothing." I bumped it. "Emily." And I looked at my father. This man I'd spent 2 years being angry at for being cold, and I said the smallest word I have ever said. I said, please. Not defensive. Not annoyed. Afraid. Please don't make me say it. Please don't make it real. Please let me keep pretending, because pretending is the only floor I have left to stand on. He didn't push. He nodded once, slow, and picked the plates back up. But something had changed in the kitchen, some pressure in the air, and I carried it home with me like a stone in my coat. Here is what I need you to understand, whoever you are, listening to this in the dark. I know what you're thinking, because I thought it too, about other women, before it was me. You're thinking, why did she stay? Why did she smile through it? Why didn't she just leave? I want you to sit with how clean that question is, how comfortable. And then I want you to know that the woman inside it cannot hear you. She is too busy managing. She is keeping the peace, so the night stays survivable. She is not weak. She is running a shift every day at a job she cannot quit and cannot name. So keep the question if you need it, but know that it is a door you are looking at from the outside, and she is on the inside, and the handle is on your side, not hers. That night, after everyone left, my father did something I only learned about afterward, when he told me, once in a garage and never again. He went out to the workshop. He opened an old wooden chest he hadn't touched in years. Inside were the pieces of a life he never talked about. Photographs of young men, some of them long dead, coins with unit insignia I wouldn't have understood, a folded flag, medals in a flat case, and a small laminated card, soft at the corners from being handled a long time ago. On the card was a short list of phrases, codes. He had made me memorize them when I was 16 years old, at the kitchen table the summer I got my first job and my first taste of a world he couldn't see into. He'd been so serious about it that I'd laughed at him. Different phrases for different things. Call me. Come get me. Quietly. And one that sat at the bottom of the list, underlined, that he made me repeat back until I had it cold. The tide's in. If you ever say those words to me, he'd told me, 16, and rolling my eyes, I don't ask questions. I don't wait. I come. No matter where I am. No matter what. Dad, I'd said, you watch too many movies. Maybe he did. Or maybe some fathers simply know the shape of the world better than their daughters wish they did. I forgot that card existed. For 18 years it sat in a chest in a garage, and I never once thought I'd need it. But I'll tell you a strange thing. I never forgot the words. Some part of me kept them, folded up small, the way you keep a spare key you're sure you'll never use. There is one more thing I did in those months, and it is the hardest for me to explain because I did it without letting myself understand why. I started recording him. Not on purpose, at first. One night, the shouting went on so long and got so ugly that I sat on the bathroom floor with my back against the door, and I opened the voice memo app on my phone, and I pressed the red circle, and I don't know what I thought I was doing. Collecting proof, maybe. Or maybe just trying to make it real in the one way he couldn't later tell me it hadn't happened. Because that was his favorite trick by morning. It was always my exaggeration, my bad memory, my emotional way of remembering things. Emily's terrible with details. So I recorded him once, then again, then it became a thing I did, quietly. A small flash drive I kept zipped in the lining of my purse, where he'd never look because he'd never once imagined I had anything worth hiding. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself I'd probably never listen to them again. I want you to remember that flash drive. He didn't know it existed. Neither, really, did I. The night it all broke was a Tuesday in October. I don't remember what started it, and I've stopped trying to, because the truth is nothing started it. Things like that don't need a reason, they just need an evening. What I remember is the keys hitting the counter instead of resting on it. I remember the shift in his shoulders, the particular flat light in his eyes that meant the evening had already decided what it was going to be. I remember backing toward the counter, the glass, the thinning air, and I remember my hand finding my phone and my thumb finding a number it had known since I was 16, and 3 words rising up out of 18 years of silence. The tide's in. He said he was 90 seconds out. I found out later he made it in a little under 2 minutes, from a house that should have been 10 minutes away, and I have never asked him how, because I don't think I want to know what a man has to have been once to keep that particular answer loaded and ready for 18 years. Derek came back into the kitchen. I kept him talking. I don't remember the words. I remember the animal work of it, keeping my voice level, keeping my body between him and the hallway, keeping him in the room the way my father's flat voice had told me to. There is a version of me I didn't know existed until that night, and she was calm in a way that frightened me later, because calm like that is not peace. It is a person who has run out of other options. I heard the truck. No headlights swinging across the window, he'd cut them at the corner. I heard the back door, the one we never locked, open without a sound. And then my father was simply in the room, the way weather is suddenly in a room, and Derek turned and saw him and did the most Derek thing he ever did in his life. He smiled. "Look who's here," he slurred. "Captain America." My father did not raise his voice. He did not raise anything. He said, "Step away from her." Or what? Derek spread his arms wide, playing to an audience that wasn't there. The old man's serious. "You know what your problem is, Walt? Everybody treats you like you're some wise old veteran, but you're just a retired nobody hiding in a garage. I have replayed what happened next more times than I can count, and I still can't slow it down." It was one motion. Derek's shoulder dipped, that little tell of a man about to make everything worse, and my father was already there, already inside it. And then Derek was face down on our kitchen floor, with his own arm folded up behind his back, and my father's knee set light and exact between his shoulder blades. No noise. No flourish. It took less time than it takes to say it. "What?" Derek's voice cracked, high and stunned. "How did you stop resisting?" my father said in the same mild voice he'd used at the grill. "You're not hurt. You're restrained. There's a difference." And there was no anger in it. That is the part I need you to hear. A man had his hands on the person who had spent 7 years making me small, and there was no anger in him at all, only a terrible, economical competence, a thing that had clearly been done 1,000 times to people who had wanted very badly to be somewhere else. The retired nobody who filed paperwork in the Navy held my husband against the floor with 2 fingers of pressure and did not so much as raise his pulse. Red and blue light swung across the living room walls. 2 county deputies came through the front door with their weapons up, and my father immediately lifted one hand, palm open, and said, without turning around, "Victims secure. Suspects restrained. He's not armed. Clean. Procedural." The words of a man who had spoken to armed men entering rooms before. And I watched the older deputy's face change. Not because he recognized my father, because he recognized the behavior, the calm, the economy, the hand raised before anyone asked. He lowered his weapon a few inches and said carefully, "Sir, were you service?" My father stood, slow, letting the deputy's partner take over. He looked suddenly like an old man again, the pop of his knees, the stiffness in his shoulders. "Retired Navy," he said. That was all. He didn't mention the teams. He didn't mention the countries. He didn't mention the young men in the photographs in the chest. At his age, he told me once, silence is easier, especially about the things you spent the rest of your life trying to forget. Derek was still talking from the floor. This psycho attacked me, but nobody was listening to him anymore. And I think that was the exact moment, more than the arm behind his back, that the reckoning actually began, the moment the room stopped listening to Derek Coleman. The older deputy crouched down to my level because I had slid down the cabinets to the floor without noticing. "Ma'am," he said gently, "are you injured?" And I said, "Yes, one word." 18 years of silence, and the whole thing came out as one small word, and it changed the temperature of the room, and I watched them read me my husband his rights while he shouted that he was the victim, and no one in that kitchen believed him. My father crossed the floor and knelt and put a blanket around my shoulders, the way he used to during thunderstorms when I was small and Duke's grandfather would climb onto the bed. "You're safe now," he said. And I clung to him, and that nearly broke both of us, because I think we both understood in the same instant that I had not been safe for a very long time, and that I had never once told him, and that he had kept 90 seconds loaded for 18 years anyway. That was the first reveal, the night one. The face slap in the kitchen. But it is not the one that took Derek down. He was a man with money and a good haircut and a lawyer, and men like that do not fall in a kitchen. They fall in a room with a flag in it and a record and their own voice played back to them. The preliminary hearing was in late October. Derek's lawyer was smooth and did exactly what those lawyers do. He built a stressed, successful young husband, a difficult marriage, an emotional wife, and, at the center of it, a dangerous, unstable old man who had used excessive force against his own son-in-law. He turned toward my father when he said it. He wanted a reaction. My father sat with his hands folded and gave him nothing. Then the prosecutor put up the body camera footage, and the room watched my father, on screen, restrain a shouting drunk man without a single strike, hand raised, voice level, victim secure. It is very hard to call a man dangerous while a jury watches him be that careful. The lawyer's story got thinner in real time. But the thing that ended it, the thing I had been carrying in the lining of my purse for a year without letting myself know why, was the flash drive. I gave it to the detective. Her name was Sarah Bennett, and she had a way of not blinking when I talked that made it possible to keep talking. I told her there was more, and I reached into my purse and pulled it out, this small, ordinary object, and I said, "I started recording him months ago." I know that's probably wrong. Detective Bennett did not blink. "Surviving isn't wrong," she said. "And I want to tell every woman listening to this that I needed to be told that by someone with a badge before I could believe it, and I am not ashamed of that anymore." She plugged it in. The first clip was 40 seconds long. 40 seconds of a man's voice doing the thing he'd sworn to everyone he never did, and glass, and me crying. And then near the end, one sentence, cold and clear, that made the detective take the headphones off slowly and look at me. On the recording, my husband said, "If your father ever interferes, I'll make sure he regrets it." He had recorded his own intent. He had, months before that Tuesday, spoken the plan aloud, in his own voice, in his own kitchen, and I had, without understanding why, kept it, his weapon, in my purse. The whole time. The sentencing was 6 weeks later. I almost didn't go. But my father did something that morning I hadn't seen him do since we buried my mother. He wore the uniform. I came downstairs and he was standing in the front room in navy dress whites, and he was pinning the medals to the chest, one at a time, slow, like each one weighed something. There was a silver star among them. I had never seen it. I had lived in his house for 18 years and I had never seen it, because it had lived in a chest in a garage under a laminated card with 3 words on it. "You never wear that," I said. "I know." He fixed the last pin. "Your mother liked to see me in it. Said it reminded her there was a man under all the quiet." He looked at me, and for the first time in my adult life, I was not looking at a nobody, or a quiet old man, or even just my father. I was looking at all of him at once, all the parts he'd spent my whole life folding up and putting away so that I would never have to know what he'd had to be. "Today," he said, "I want the room to know it too." When he walked into that courthouse in his dress whites, conversation stopped. And I watched my husband, my confident, white-toothed husband, who had built his entire cruelty on the assumption that the old man was harmless and had never once checked whether it was true. I watched Derek Coleman look at my father and understand, finally, all the way down, exactly what he had spent 7 years mocking at barbecues. I watched fear cross his face. Not fear of violence. Something worse for a man like him. The fear of being seen accurately at last. The judge asked if I wanted to speak. I hadn't planned to. But Derek's lawyer had just finished suggesting, one more time, that my father had turned me against a good man. He brainwashed her. And something in me that had been folded up for 18 years finally stood. I said, "My father didn't brainwash me." The room turned. My voice shook, and then it stopped shaking. He saved my life. I told them the rest. The jokes. The plates set down before the punchline landed. The bruises and the makeup in the purse. The way I'd stopped recognizing myself, how I could stand in front of 25 fourth graders and be completely myself and walk into my own kitchen and disappear. One of the jurors, an older woman, wiped her eyes. And I understood something standing there that I want to leave with you. War wounds a person, and everyone can see it. This kind of thing erases a person while they are still standing there smiling, and no one sees it at all, sometimes not even her. The judge asked my father if he wanted to make a statement. He stood, and every joint in his body announced his age, and his voice was steady anyway. "I spent most of my life around violence," he said. "War, fear, loss. And the one thing I learned is that strength has nothing to do with making people afraid of you." He looked once at Derek. Real strength is protecting the people who can't protect themselves, especially your own. He paused. I don't hate this man. I hate what he chose to become. But I'm not here asking this court to destroy him. I'm asking it to hold him accountable. Those aren't the same thing. The sentence when it came was accountability, and it was real. Prison time, mandatory alcohol treatment, a domestic violence program, a permanent restraining order. His name in the county paper, which for a man who sold his whole self on the highway was its own particular ruin, the salesman everyone knew, known now for something else. And here's the mechanism of it, the thing I want you to sit with. None of it came from my father's hands. It came from Derek's own mouth, his own recorded voice, his own arrogance on the stand, his own threat, spoken months before, kept safe in the lining of a purse he never thought to search. He built the weapon. He handed it to me without knowing. He hung himself with a sentence he chose to say. As the deputies led him out, he stopped near the door and turned back toward me. His eyes were wet, and for the first time in 7 years, I believed the tears were real and not a tool. "I'm sorry," he said. I didn't answer him. I held my father's hand, and I let my husband walk out of the room, and I felt the fear I'd carried in my body for 7 years simply leave. Not all at once, but leaving. That winter, I got an apartment above a florist's shop downtown run by an older widow named Diane who left cut flowers outside my door on Mondays and never once asked why I flinched at loud voices. I went back to my classroom. My father started going to a Wednesday breakfast at the VFW hall with a retired Marine named Curtis, and he came home from those lighter, and I realized he had been alone in his grief for a lot longer than I had let myself notice. My son Noah is 9. He asked me once, fishing off my father's dock with a bluegill on the line, why his dad had been so mean. I told him the truest thing I had. Some people, I said, confuse loving something with owning it. And the two things look alike from far away and nothing alike up close. He thought about that the way children do, seriously, and then the fish pulled and he forgot the question, which is exactly what a 9-year-old should get to do. A letter came from the prison in the spring. I recognized the stamp. I read it at my kitchen table with the window open. It wasn't excuses. That surprised me. It was as close as a man like him could come, honest. One line has stayed with me. He wrote, "I spent years trying to feel powerful by making other people smaller. My father asked me, careful, if I was going to forgive him. And I told him the truth, which is that I don't know yet, and that forgiveness at my age is not a light switch but a thing you decide again some mornings and not others. What I do know is that forgiveness, if it ever comes, will not be a door back in. That door is closed. I closed it myself, and the handle, this time, is on my side. There's a laminated card in a chest in my father's garage, soft at the corners now. Last month I made a new one. I sat my son down at the kitchen table and I taught him 3 words, and he rolled his eyes at me exactly the way I rolled mine at his grandfather, and I made him say them back to me until he had them cold. The tide's in. I come. No matter what. He thinks I watch too many movies. Maybe I do. Or maybe some mothers simply know the shape of the world now better than their sons wish they did. I'd rather he laugh at me for 18 years and never need it than not have it the one night he does. I've thought a lot about what my father knew that the rest of that dinner table didn't. It wasn't the training. It was simpler than that. He knew that the dangerous quiet in a family isn't the quiet of the strong man in the apron. It's the quiet of everyone who saw and looked down at their plates. So, let me ask you something, and then I'll let you go back to your night. Whose plate did you look down at? And is there a phone call you could make tomorrow? Not a rescue, just a question, just I saw that. Are you okay to someone who has gotten very good at smiling through it? I'll tell you the thing I most want you to keep from one person who was underestimated to another. Being underestimated is not the same as being small. I let a man decide who I was for 7 years because he was loud and I had gotten quiet, and the day it turned wasn't the day I got louder. It was the day I finally said one true word out loud, yes, I'm injured, and let the truth do the work I'd been too tired to do alone. You don't have to be loud to be right. You just have to stop keeping the secret that's keeping you small. If this story found you tonight, and some part of it sat too close, subscribe and stay a while. These are the stories the people who dismissed you would rather you never told out loud. We're going to keep telling them anyway.